The movie begins with a girl named Chelsea who is engaged in a video call with her best friend, Mia. The topic of discussion is quite intriguing. Mia confesses that she's been sharing intimate photos with a boy named Dylan, someone she's quite fond of. This revelation leaves Chelsea concerned. The worry that Dylan might share these personal pictures with his friends weighs heavily on her mind. Mia assures her that he wouldn't do such a thing, but her friend is still concerned nevertheless. Mia then proposes the idea of sharing Dylan's photos with her, just in case he tries to play dirty. However, Chelsea is reluctant and emphasizes that she needs to head to school. Chelsea then makes her way downstairs, where she sees her mother already in the Halloween spirit, busy with decorations. Meanwhile, her sister Christina is engrossed in a phone conversation. Taking in the scene, Chelsea decides to ask her mother to give her a ride to school. She looks at her annoying sister and it's clear that they do not see eye to eye. It's clear that she'd rather not be associated with her sister and her seemingly snobbish friends. Yet, her plea is met with a gentle refusal from her mom, who advises Chelsea to mend her relationship with Christina. Soon Christina hangs up her call and she playfully teases Chelsea upon noticing her texting someone named VR Cowboy. Chelsea, however, remains tight-lipped about the matter and encourages her sister to move on with her day. Once at school, Chelsea's phone starts buzzing with messages from VR Cowboy, but she consciously chooses to ignore them. Her attention shifts when she spots Mia engaged in conversation with both Dylan and Seth. When the boys depart, Mia unveils a surprising plan. Dylan has invited them over to his place later that evening. Despite Chelsea's reservations, Mia requests her help in keeping Seth company while she enjoys some quality time with Dylan. Though the idea doesn't sit well with Chelsea, she finds herself agreeing to Mia's proposition. The evening arrives, and Chelsea accompanies Mia to Dylan's house. However, soon she starts to get anxious when Mia and Dylan move to the bedroom, leaving Chelsea alone with Seth. Now, all alone in the room with Seth, things take an uncomfortable turn for the poor girl when he makes a sudden move, kissing Chelsea and placing her hand on his lap. Reacting swiftly, she pulls away from the situation. The following day at school, Chelsea opens up to Mia about the distressing incident with Seth. However, their moment is interrupted by Dylan's arrival, engaging Mia in a passionate make-out session which leaves Chelsea with a sour taste. She feels left out and gets somewhat compelled to respond to VR Cowboy. As it turns out, VR Cowboy introduces himself as Brad and initiates a flirtatious conversation with Chelsea. But just as things are taking an interesting turn online, the school's security guard arrives and catches Chelsea using her phone. The guard seizes her phone, putting a halt to her online interaction. After the school day ends, Chelsea's mom arrives to pick her up, looking all angry. She reprimands Chelsea for getting herself into trouble and confiscates her phone for an entire month. Stripped of her primary source of entertainment and communication, poor Chelsea feels as if she is in jail. She tries to busy herself with reading books and rearranging her room. After a couple of days, Mia pays her a visit and hands over a spare phone, making the girl's life a little easier. However, Chelsea's initial gratitude takes a nosedive when she finds her friend about to leave. It turns out that she is again going out to meet Dylan, highlighting a shift in her priority. Feeling hurt by this, Chelsea confronts Mia, accusing her of prioritizing Dylan over their friendship. In the midst of this heated exchange, Mia departs, leaving Chelsea to grapple with her feelings of betrayal. Left to her own devices, Chelsea decides to resume her conversation with Brad on the newly acquired spare phone. She vents her dissatisfaction with life and expresses her sense of isolation. To her surprise, Brad offers a listening ear and suggests that they get to know each other better. He delves into Chelsea's online profile and mentions her claim of being a cheerleader, although she isn't one. But for fear that he might lose interest in her, Chelsea sneaks into her sister Christina's room and borrows her cheerleading uniform for a photo session, aiming to uphold her fabricated image. After she takes a few pictures, she notices that Christina is back and quickly leaves the room. Chelsea then shares the photos she took of herself in her sister's cheerleading uniform with Brad. Soon they decide to engage in a video call, but strangely enough, she can't see Brad's face. The man tells her that he dropped his phone, so that's why the camera is malfunctioning. The man looks suspicious, but Chelsea pays no heed. Over the next 3 weeks, Chelsea's connection with Brad deepens through their continued conversations. Their rapport evolves to the point where Chelsea proposes the idea of transitioning their online connection into a real-world relationship. Brad readily agrees. As they are talking, Chelsea hears a female voice in the background on Brad's end, and he seems visibly irritated by her presence. Chelsea inquires about it, and Brad explains that it's his sister, Sadie, causing the disruption. Chelsea and Brad decide to move forward with their plans. They hatch a plan to meet in person at a Halloween party held in a warehouse. Brad suggests a creative theme. Chelsea could dress up as a zombie cheerleader while he takes on the role of a zombie quarterback. Enthralled by the idea, Chelsea enthusiastically agrees to the plan. At the evening of the Halloween party, Chelsea tells her mother that she'll be spending the evening at home, handing out candy to trick-or-treaters. However, once everyone departs, Chelsea diverges from her story. She makes her way to the party venue, where she promptly encounters Brad. His face is concealed by makeup, and he sports a soccer helmet. In a somewhat unexpected move, he offers her alcohol and insists they finish the entire bottle before leaving to avoid getting caught. With some hesitation, Chelsea consumes the entirety of the bottle's contents, and soon starts to get dizzy. Taking advantage of the situation, Brad then guides her to his car, where he proceeds to tie her up and places her in the backseat. Before driving away, he destroys Chelsea's phone, making sure that no one can connect with her anymore. After a period of unconsciousness, Chelsea regains awareness, finding herself confined in a chilling and unfamiliar basement. Right then, Brad arrives, bringing her food and untying her hands. The following day, Brad enters the basement once more, but his demeanor takes a chilling turn. He addresses Chelsea as Sadie. Chelsea attempts to correct him, but Brad's response is violent. He slaps her and insists that she's now to be referred to as Sadie. Before he departs, he carelessly flips over her plate of food, causing it to scatter on the ground. Stunned by the sudden aggression, Chelsea remains speechless until Brad leaves the room. Her food is then consumed by a rat whose sudden presence strangely comforts her. When the rat eventually departs, Chelsea is left in tears, mourning her cruel fate. The next day, Brad returns, cruelly teasing Chelsea with a small amount of water. Thirsty and hoping for sustenance, Chelsea eagerly drinks it. Then the sick psycho asks her name. Chelsea's reply, dripping with sarcasm, is Sadie. Unimpressed with her attitude, Brad drops the food he was about to give her onto the dirty ground. Yet, the pitiful girl's desperation drives her to eat the fallen food anyway. As Brad exits once again, he notices signs of rat droppings in the vicinity. Disgusted by the sight, he sets a rat trap there. Chelsea awakens to find the unfortunate creature caught within it, and she strangely grieves for the rodent. Sometime later, suddenly, the lights in the basement are switched on. Another figure enters the scene. A cheerleader named Sadie, or so she claims, because her real name is Megan. Acting upon Brad's orders, Megan unlocks Chelsea's chains. Seizing the opportunity, Chelsea frantically attempts to escape the confines of the basement. But her efforts are thwarted as she struggles to open doors and windows, ultimately finding herself trapped. The doors are locked while the windows are blocked with cardboard. Megan quickly catches up to Chelsea, pinning her against the wall. She issues a stern warning, instructing Chelsea to behave if she wants to avoid trouble. Once Chelsea's anxiety subsides, Megan instructs Chelsea to rake the carpet meticulously, erasing any trace of footprints. She emphasizes to maintain perfection and cleanliness. Chelsea complies until she spots Brad upstairs in his office and stops. Looking at her frozen state, Megan quickly leads her into another room where she sees another cheerleader named Heather, who also claims to be Sadie. Heather asks Chelsea for her real name, but the terrified girl remains steadfast and insists that she's indeed Sadie. Satisfied, Heather then departs to bake a cake for Brad. Meanwhile, Megan commands Chelsea to undress so that she may clean her thoroughly. When the poor shy girl remains frozen in her spot, Megan forcefully ushers Chelsea to undress and get into a tub, disregarding her plea for space. After the unwelcome cleanup, Megan reveals how their captor prefers blondes, so Chelsea must bleach her hair unless she wants something bad to happen. Meanwhile, in the other room, Brad is wearing a strange headgear adorned with cameras and ominously brandishes a knife, simulating stabbing motions as though rehearsing some disturbing scenario. With Chelsea's hair now bleached, her focus shifts when she hears sounds of crying emanating from the other room. Investigating, she discovers an injured individual named Tina. Strangely, the girl swiftly starts accusing Chelsea of betrayal and calling her name, startling the already terrified girl. Outside the room, Brad leaves his office when he suddenly is hit by a piercing headache. As he clutches his head in discomfort, he experiences a vivid recollection of the actual Sadie. Her taunting laughter accompanies the memory of her displaying her body too. The intensity of the memory gradually subsides, bringing Brad back to the present moment. The man looks menacing as he finds Heather engrossed in baking a cake in the kitchen. He slowly approaches Heather and touches her inappropriately, all the while mocking if such attention is indeed what she desires. Although she is disgusted to the core, Heather reluctantly agrees to Brad's invasive advances, answering his question with a coerced yes. Brad then violently slams Heather's head onto a table, leaving her with a bruised cheek. Shortly after the incident, Heather makes her way to Chelsea's room. Despite her injuries, she helps Chelsea prepare for dinner, forming a fragile bond between the two captives. As the injured girl is putting on makeup for Chelsea, the latter expresses concern for Tina's injured state. She says that the poor girl needs to see a doctor. Heather dishearteningly explains that Brad would never allow them to seek professional help. Instead, they're left to mend Tina's injuries themselves. Frustrated by this revelation, Chelsea questions whether they've ever attempted to escape. The other reveals the grim consequences she's witnessed when such attempts are made. Heather shifts her focus to helping Chelsea prepare for dinner, continuing to put on her makeup. During this interaction, Heather mentions their outside time. While this phrase holds a glimmer of hope, the reality is far from what Chelsea imagines. Brad permits Chelsea a form of outside time through a virtual reality headpiece, allowing her to briefly escape into the illusion of the outside world. However, this illusion is short-lived, as Brad eventually terminates the session, directing the captives to proceed to dinner. Before they join Brad for dinner, Heather discreetly advises Chelsea to save some food for Tina, as leftovers are Tina's only sustenance. At dinner, the famished Chelsea starts eating without Brad's explicit permission, nearly inviting punishment. Overwhelmed by the tension, Chelsea's emotions bubble over, leading her to confess her longing for her mother's presence. Brad seizes on this vulnerability, revealing to her that Chelsea's father was sent back from the army to aid in her search. He further taunts Chelsea by congratulating her on finally attaining more attention than her sister Christina. These words drive Chelsea to tears. but Brad quickly gets angry, threatening her to regain her composure or else she would be deprived of dinner. Hearing this, the girl quickly suppresses her emotions. After dinner, Chelsea is surprised to find Heather packing her belongings. Heather confides that she's been held captive for a harrowing 3 years. Brad, satisfied with what he perceives as her perfection, has decided to release her. Chelsea begs the girl to somehow alert the authorities once she is out, but before she can reply, Brad suddenly arrives, shattering any hope of freedom for Heather. He takes the girl downstairs, indicating that Heather's departure is not as simple as it seems. He mentions her final performance, which casts a sinister cloud over the situation. Back upstairs, Chelsea tends to Tina, feeding her and realizing that she's the missing girl she had seen on the news. The grim realization leaves her pitying the poor soul along with herself. Will they ever get to see the light of the day again? Downstairs, Brad readies for Heather's ominous final performance. Suddenly, he's plagued by another headache, a reminder of his painful past. His memories drift to his sister Sadie's birth, and the immediate favor his mother showed to his younger sibling. Brad's childhood wish, uttered in frustration, that Sadie had never been born sparked his mother's anger, leading to his banishment. Brad eventually returns to the present, focusing on Heather and the task at hand. He informs her that her final performance will be in the basement, promising her freedom if she completes it. The psychopath leads Heather into the basement. As she warms up, with her back towards Brad, the man dons the VR headpiece he had prepared. He instructs Heather to initiate a cheer dance performance, but her movements falter when she turns around and catches sight of Brad brandishing a knife. Fear drives Heather to attempt an escape, but Brad swiftly blocks her path, slashing her arm. In the ensuing struggle, Heather argues that Brad deemed her perfect, so why is he doing this? He confirms the claim. However, he also reveals the darker side of this perfection, explaining how his mother's favoritism fueled resentment within him. As Heather's desperation grows, she vehemently denies being Brad's sister. This denial incites Brad's anger. The extremely angered Brad releases his wrath upon the poor girl by repeatedly plunging the knife into her. Despite Heather's fierce resistance, Brad's overpowering strength prevails. He corners her, inflicting further wounds, and as her last attempts at escaping the hell and fighting back prove futile, the man eventually ends her life with a sick sentence that he would enjoy her demise repeatedly. After being done with his work, the psycho makes his way back upstairs and into Chelsea's room to find her asleep. He looks shaken from the life that he just took. The adrenaline has yet to subside. After invading the sleeping girl's room, he hovers his hand over her body but ultimately refrains from touching her. Instead, he rests his head on Chelsea's chest and succumbs to tears, awakening her in the process. Fear grips Chelsea as Brad looms over her, but an inner voice seemingly interrupts his emotional turmoil. This sudden change leads him to leave her room. Chelsea, now alone, hastily covers herself with the blanket, trembling in terror. The next day, Chelsea suddenly hears a voice and finds that there is a hole in the wall behind the side table. She and Megan talk through that hole separating their rooms. In this disturbing conversation, Chelsea grapples with the realization that poor Megan may be developing Stockholm Syndrome. Megan strangely becomes possessive as she warns Chelsea to stay away from Brad, asserting that he belongs to her. Despite the instances of abuse she endures at Brad's hands, Megan admits that she still harbors feelings for him. During breakfast, Chelsea deliberately uses up all the ketchup, inciting Brad's anger. His response is to confiscate her food and forbid her from eating. Megan finds amusement in this situation, but Brad's irritation with her prompts him to punish both Chelsea and Megan by revoking their access to the so-called outside time. Later that day, Chelsea visits and speaks with Tina, who discloses that Brad impregnated her. Tina's escape attempt was driven by this pregnancy, which led to a confrontation with Brad resulting in a miscarriage. The man then left her in this room afterwards. After her story, she heart-wrenchingly begs Chelsea to help her end her through an overdose. Chelsea, however, declines this plea, choosing instead to change Tina's bandages. It becomes evident that Tina's wound is infected, leading her to despair about her chances of survival. The gravity of the situation prompts Chelsea to make a difficult decision. She finally agrees to assist Tina in her plan to end her, but in exchange for information on how to escape. Later that day, as Chelsea cleans the living room, she stumbles upon a photograph of the real Sadie. However, before she can process this discovery, Brad abruptly snatches the photo away, delivering a stern warning for her to never touch it again. Afterwards, Chelsea retreats to her room when Tina's call interrupts her solitude. Tina reveals that Brad is occupied mowing the backyard, providing Chelsea an opportunity to retrieve pills from Brad's nightstand. Despite the locked doors, Tina guides Chelsea through the process of unlocking them. Chelsea successfully accomplishes this task and heads to Brad's room, where she discovers the pills alongside Heather's necklace. Petrified, she realizes that instead of getting out of the house, freedom means something else. She remembers to rake the carpet to erase any trace of her presence. With the pills in hand, Chelsea quickly moves out of the room. As she hears the more, she seeks to access Brad's office for internet assistance, but this endeavor proves fruitless due to a password block. She hurriedly abandons the attempt and makes her way back while meticulously erasing her footprint. Meanwhile, Brad completes his yard work and enters the house through the front door. Upstairs, Chelsea faces a moment of panic as she accidentally spills the pills on the floor. Swiftly collecting them, she makes her way to Tina's room. However, Brad's acute hearing alerts him to the sound of the lock being replaced. Acting swiftly, He opens the door, prompting Chelsea to hide in their shared bathroom. Tina's distress in Brad's presence is palpable, leading him to grow agitated and attempt to take. Chelsea quickly intervenes, appealing to Brad to stop the violence. Brad's agitated self gets even more annoyed as he turns his aggression towards Chelsea, trying to choke her. Seeing Tina's tears, Chelsea offers to end herself. This proposition catches Brad off guard, but he agrees, intrigued by the prospect of witnessing such an act. As Chelsea approaches Tina, the girl expresses gratitude that at least her impending demise won't be at Brad's hands. Mustering up her courage, Chelsea suffocates Tina to oblivion with a pillow. Watching the scene, the sick man is amazed. In an effort to console the panicked Chelsea, Brad reveals a growing sense of trust in her, recognizing their shared mindset. This newfound trust prompts Brad to share his gruesome work with Chelsea, leading her to witness the video of poor Heather's slaughter. Though horrified, Chelsea feigns excitement to appease Brad's fascination. As his fascination grows, Brad poses a chilling question to Chelsea, asking for her input on how to take Megan's life. Chelsea, acting out of desperation to save Megan, suggests a brutal method, punching her till she passes away. Thinking that the psycho may change his mind, but sadly for her, Brad's intrigue is evident, and he expresses a desire to carry out this plan immediately. Panicked at the thought of Megan's immediate demise, Chelsea tries to risk her life by seducing Brad, effectively diverting his focus. Chelsea's strategy works as she manipulates Brad's emotions, showering him with flattery and praise. This leads the attention-hungry psycho to fall for Chelsea, believing her to be a perfect match for him. Their interaction escalates as they proceed to Brad's room to engage in an intimate encounter. Following their encounter, Brad escorts Chelsea back to her room to sleep, leaving her alone with her emotional turmoil. As soon as the door closes, she breaks down, desperate for a way out. Chelsea's attempt to end her own life with painkillers, but the attempt fails, resulting in her vomiting. The next day, during breakfast, Brad's persistent gaze on Chelsea doesn't go unnoticed by Megan. He mentions testing a new VR camera, and Megan eagerly volunteers for the task. Chelsea, while standing to clean the table, is touched by Brad's caress, an action that fuels Megan's jealousy. Megan intentionally bumps into Chelsea in the kitchen, sparking a confrontation that escalates into a fight. Brad intervenes, ordering Chelsea to take Megan to her room. There, all alone with Megan, Chelsea reveals the truth about Brad's gruesome actions. She shows Megan Tina's lifeless body as evidence and discloses Heather's fate at Brad's hands. Unfortunately, Megan remains blinded due to her infatuation with Brad. She rushes downstairs to inform him of Chelsea's accusations. Brad reacts angrily, visibly hurt that Chelsea betrayed him. He confines both Chelsea and Megan to their respective rooms, locking them in. Seizing a moment of privacy when Brad is away, Chelsea communicates with Megan through the wall hole. She urges her to cooperate so that they may avoid their impending doom, but Megan, still under Brad's spell, clings to the belief in his innocence. Meanwhile, Brad's twisted pursuits lead him to the basement, where he tests his new-made cameras. As he is away, she seizes an opportunity to escape. She flees through Tina's room and joins forces with Megan. Together, they make their way to Brad's office, where Chelsea shows Megan the horrifying footage of Heather's slaughter. As Megan struggles with the disturbing scene, Chelsea searches the drawers for anything that might aid their escape. However, their efforts are in vain, as Brad unexpectedly returns, catching them off guard. He swiftly drags Megan back to her room before turning his attention to Chelsea. He binds her hands and forcefully drags her to the basement. Amidst the chaos, Megan listens helplessly to Chelsea's screams from her room, finally awake from her sick love dream. Overwhelmed by the dire situation, she resolves to take action. She dismantles the wall separating their rooms and escapes through Tina's room, driven by a determination to help Chelsea. In the basement, Brad confronts Chelsea, angered by the realization that her claims were fabricated. As he readies himself to end, a sudden headache interrupts him, triggering a bunch of memories from his past in the same basement. These recollections unveil a dark truth. Years ago, Brad took the life of his mother so that he may keep Sadie with him forever. Tragically, Sadie chose to end her to escape his grasp. This event made him obsess over him and find girls to imitate her, so he may feel as if he still owns the girl. As he is busy getting attacked with these recollections, Megan makes a courageous move. In the kitchen, she struggles to open a locked drawer containing knives. When she finally succeeds, she seizes the largest knife and makes her way to save Chelsea. Brad is finally awake from his memories and takes out all his pent-up rage and frustrations through Chelsea, who summons her strength and retaliates, hurling a rock at Brad. Just as the confrontation escalates, Megan finally makes a bold entrance, attempting to plunge the knife into Brad. Her efforts prove futile as Brad overpowers her too. Despite their injuries, the girls fight back, refusing to back down. In a final desperate bid, Brad launches another assault on Chelsea, but Megan recovers and attacks him with the knife in the back, weakening him considerably. Seizing the opportunity, the girls unite to overpower Brad, beating the psycho senseless. They then quickly seize his keys and make a dash for the front door. However, their escape is short-lived. Brad manages to break free and grabs Megan, choking her. Chelsea runs to her rescue, forcefully grabbing the camera headgear and smashing it into Brad's face. The brutal assault disables him, allowing the girls to finally open the front door and step into the outside world. Outside, they seek help from passers-by, who enabled them to contact their families. In the aftermath, we see Chelsea attending therapy to address the trauma she endured. Meanwhile, Brad finds himself in an asylum, haunted by the bloody images of Sadie, his sister, who attacks him with a knife as he deserves. Meanwhile, the movie ends with two young girls in a different location making a fateful decision to meet an online stranger, indicating that the cycle of sinister crimes is set to continue.